4 leg exercises you should do, and 4 you should avoid after 40 years old. Strengthening your legs is not just about aesthetics but a fundamental necessity for quality of life, especially after 40 years old. However, many of us go to a gym and receive a standardized exercise sheet without the professional considering our individual characteristics, limitations, and goals. This is especially problematic when we pass 40 years old. More sensitive joints, less elastic tendons, and slower recovery require a differentiated approach to training. Unfortunately, most people continue performing these movements blindly without realizing that some of them may be causing more damage than benefits. Tere fuori. Today you will see 4 leg exercises you should avoid after 40 years old, and for safer alternatives that won't compromise your joint health in the long term. Let's start with the exercises to be avoided. Number 4. Leg press with high amplitude. The leg press is one of the most popular exercises in gyms, and many instructors recommend performing it with the greatest possible amplitude, lowering the weight until the knees are very close to the chest. However, the fact is that not everyone can do this. When you perform the leg press with excessive amplitude, especially with heavy loads, a phenomenon known as butt wink occurs, a rounding of the lower back that dramatically increases pressure on the intervertebral discs. For those over 40, this represents a significant risk, as the natural degeneration of the discs is already underway, making them more vulnerable to hernias and protrusions. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that the full amplitude leg press increases compression on the lumbar discs by up to 60% compared to a moderate amplitude. To contextualize, imagine putting 440 pounds on the back of someone who already has a predisposition to lumbar problems. Adityonaji, the leg press with exaggerated amplitude, puts the knees in an extremely vulnerable position. When the knees exceed a 90 angle, the shearing forces in the joint increase exponentially. For those in their 40s or older where cartilage no longer has the same regenerative capacity and the prevalence of osteoarthritis increases considerably, this type of repetitive stress can accelerate joint wear and trigger chronic pain that will limit your ability to train in the future. In general, we can say that the risk simply does not compensate for the additional benefit that extreme amplitude could provide. Number 3. Lunges. Lunges are often praised as functional exercises that work multiple muscle groups simultaneously. However, for some, they can represent a time bomb for the knees and lower back. The main problem with lunges is that they combine 3 extremely stressful factors for the joints: body displacement, load asymmetry, and an extraordinary demand for stability. When you perform a lunge, especially with additional load, the knee of the front leg is subjected to significant shearing forces, while your spine needs to remain stable during a movement that naturally tends to misalign it. Researchers from the University of Massachusetts analyzed the biomechanics of lunges and found that even with perfect technique, the compression forces on the front knee can exceed 3 times body weight. For a person weighing 176 pounds, this means a pressure of 528 pounds concentrated in a relatively small area of cartilage. Now imagine that same person performing the movement with inadequate technique, as many do. After all, it's not easy to maintain all that stability. The numbers can easily double. For people over 40 years old, this type of repetitive stress can dramatically accelerate joint wear. The same study showed that individuals with a history of minor knee injuries, something common in those who have passed 40, have a 50% higher risk of developing complications when performing lunges regularly. Number 2. Leg extension machine. The leg extension machine is perhaps one of the most controversial exercises when we talk about long-term joint health. The main problem with the leg extension machine lies in the type of force it generates in the patellofemoral joint. Unlike functional movements, such as squats, where forces are distributed across multiple joints and muscle groups, the isolated knee extension creates significant anterior shear force, which essentially drags the patella against the femur with great intensity. Biomechanical studies published in the American Journal of Sports Medicine have demonstrated that the leg extension machine can generate patellofemoral compression forces that reach 6 times body weight during the final phase of extension. Most concerning is that this force is concentrated in a relatively small area of the articular cartilage. This type of repetitive stress, especially for those who already have reduced cartilage thickness, can dramatically accelerate joint wear and potentiate conditions such as patellar chondromalacia. Before we continue, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to correct science-based information is what will help you progress with long-term health in the world of bodybuilding. Number 1. Heavy plyometrics. Plyometric exercises, especially those involving jumps with significant impact, such as high box jumps or jumps with additional weight, represent one of the greatest risks for people over 40 years old, regardless of their training history. Heavy plyometrics subject the musculoskeletal system to extremely high forces in a short period. During the landing of a jump, the impact can generate forces that reach 10 times body weight. As demonstrated in studies conducted at the Biomechanics Research Center at the University of Michigan, for a person weighing 176 pounds, this means an instantaneous impact of 1,760 pounds being absorbed mainly by the knees, hips, and spine. The problem is that after 40 years old, both the connective tissue composed of tendons and ligaments, as well as the articular cartilage, significantly lose their elasticity and impact absorption capacity. Additionally, bone mineral density naturally begins to decline over time, especially in premenopausal women where the loss can reach 1 to 2% per year. This reduction makes bones more vulnerable to stress microfractures, which can evolve into complete fractures when subjected to repetitive high-intensity impacts. The data is even more concerning when we consider specific injuries. A longitudinal study with recreational athletes between 40 and 55 years old showed that those who included heavy plyometrics in their regular routine had a 64% higher risk of developing chronic tendinopathies, such as patellar tendinitis, and a 78% higher probability of experiencing problems in the sacroiliac joint over a 3-year period. Two groups that performed conventional strength training. Now that you know what to avoid, let's move on to exercises you can do safely, even after 40 exercise for Bulgarian split squat. Unlike the traditional lunge, which involves displacement and greater joint stress, the Bulgarian split squat is performed in a stationary manner with one foot elevated on a bench behind the body. This configuration provides multiple benefits. First, the elevated rear foot position creates a more stable base, significantly reducing the shear forces on the front knee compared to dynamic lunges. A study from the University of Ontario showed that the Bulgarian split squat reduces patellofemoral pressure by approximately 30% when compared to the traditional lunge with the same relative load. Additionally, the Bulgarian split squat promotes exceptional work of hip and trunk stabilizers, muscles often neglected in conventional exercises. Electromyographic research has demonstrated that the activation of the gluteus medius during the Bulgarian split squat is approximately 45% greater than during the traditional squat. This activation is crucial for people over 40 years old, as strengthening these stabilizers directly contributes to the prevention of lower back pain and knee problems associated with age. Remember, the gluteus maximus is literally the largest muscle in the human body. Another significant benefit is the unilateral work, which allows identifying and correcting imbalances between the sides of the body. After decades of predominant use of one side, these imbalances tend to be unilateral training with the Bulgarian split squat not only exposes these asymmetries, but helps to correct them progressively. The exercise also promotes excellent functional flexibility gains in the hip flexors and calves, areas that tend to shorten with advancing age and prolonged sitting time. Number 3. Leg curl machine. While many people focus excessively on quadriceps development, the truth is that strengthening the hamstrings, the target muscle group of the leg curl machine, becomes increasingly important with advancing age. Studies from the University of Copenhagen have demonstrated that after 40 years old, hamstring strength decreases on average 15% faster than quadriceps strength when there is no specific training. This imbalance is directly associated with a 35% increase in the risk of knee injuries and lower back pain. Unlike compound exercises such as the stiff leg deadlift, which also works the hamstrings but imposes great stress on the lumbar spine, the leg curl machine allows isolating these muscles safely and in a controlled manner. For people over 40 years old, where the prevalence of lumbar disc diseases increases significantly, this characteristic is extremely valuable. It is estimated that about 30% of the population in this age group presents some degree of disc degeneration. Research published in the Journal of Orthopedic Research has demonstrated that individuals with strong hamstrings show up to 60% less incidence of ligament injuries in the knee during day-to-day activities. For people over 40 years old, this protection is particularly important. The leg curl machine also allows for technique variations, that can optimize results for different body types and needs. For example, rotating the feet inward or outward during the exercise modifies the emphasis between different portions of the hamstrings, allowing for more comprehensive and personalized work. Exercise 2. Calf raises. The main benefit of this exercise is in strengthening the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, fundamental for stability during walking and for impact absorption when walking or running. After 40 years old, studies from Stanford University have demonstrated that calf strength begins to decrease at a rate of approximately 2% per year when there is no specific stimulus. This loss is directly associated with gait alterations that increase stress on other joints such as knees and hips. Calf raises also promote significant benefits for vascular health. Known as the body's second heart, calves function as pumps that assist in venous return, reducing the risk of varicose veins and edema in the lower limbs. Another crucial benefit is maintaining ankle mobility. The reduction in dorsiflexion range, that is, the ability to point the foot upward, is associated with a 2.5 times greater risk of falls in the elderly, as documented in research from the American National Institute of Health. Regular calf work, especially when performed with full amplitude, helps preserve this essential mobility. The exercise also contributes significantly to bone health. The muscle traction generated during calf raises stimulates the production of osteocyte cells responsible for bone formation. Moreover, strong calves are directly associated with better performance in daily activities such as climbing stairs, getting up from chairs, and walking on irregular terrain. Exercise 1. Glute bridge. The main differential of the glute bridge is in the ability to intensely work the gluteal muscles without overloading the lumbar spine or knees. A study conducted at the University of Auckland demonstrated that during the correct execution of the glute bridge, the activation of the gluteus maximus reaches up to 35% higher than during the traditional squat, while the compressive forces on the lumbar spine are approximately 45% lower. For those in their 40s or older, where the prevalence of chronic lower back pain increases considerably, affecting about 40% of the population in this age group, according to data from the World Health Organization, this characteristic is extremely valuable. Research published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research has demonstrated that gluteal strength is directly correlated with pelvic stability during gait, reducing stress on the sacroiliac joint and the lumbar spine. Additionally, well-developed glutes function as natural shock absorbers when sitting, reducing direct pressure on the ischium and spine. This benefit is particularly relevant for people who spend long hours sitting, a common situation in many professions. The glute bridge also contributes significantly to improving posture, counteracting the tendency for increased lumbar curvature that frequently develops with age. This postural correction has a cascade effect, improving the alignment of the entire spine and reducing the risk of neck pain and radiated pain. Another crucial benefit is strengthening the entire pelvic region, especially in women who have had children. Strengthening the pelvic floor becomes essential to prevent problems such as urinary incontinence. Bonus exercise: free squat. The free squat deserves a special mention in this list, as it truly represents a double-edged sword for practitioners over 40 years old. When performed correctly, it can be one of the most beneficial and functional exercises for the overall development of the lower limbs. However, when performed with inadequate technique, it has the potential to cause significant damage to the joints. The benefits of a well-executed free squat are impressive. It promotes an integrated activation of practically all the major muscle groups of the lower limbs: quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, and adductors. In addition to requiring strong participation from the trunk stabilizers, the correct execution of the free squat requires some key points: keeping the weight distributed across the 3 points of the foot heel base of the big toe and base of the little toe, knees aligned with the feet, relatively upright trunk, and only descending to the point where the natural lumbar curve can be maintained. However, common errors observed in gyms transform this potentially beneficial exercise into a time bomb for the joints. The most prevalent error is allowing the knees to collapse inward during the rising phase, which dramatically increases stress on the anterior cruciate ligament and the patellofemoral joint. Biomechanical studies demonstrate that this medial collapse can increase knee shear forces by up to 45%. Another frequent error is the loss of the natural lumbar curve in the deeper phases of the movement. This postural alteration transfers a significant load to the intervertebral discs and the articular facets of the spine, structures that are already naturally more degenerated after 40 years old. If you enjoyed this and also want to check out 5 protein sources you should consume and 5 you should try to avoid, we've left a video appearing right now on the screen, showing and explaining each of them. Don't miss it. Thank you for watching this far, and may God bless you.